You didn't touch me, right? 4 words. That's all it took to shatter a good man's life. Daniel Reed had spent 17 years building his reputation on one simple principle: do the right thing, even when no one's watching. But when a single photograph stripped of context went viral, the truth didn't matter anymore. Whispers became accusations, kindness became suspicion, and a father who'd only tried to protect his boss found himself fighting for everything he'd worked to build. This is the story of what happens when integrity meets injustice, and why character always outlasts rumors. If you stay until the end, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. It drummed against the windshield of the black sedan with mechanical persistence, turning the Chicago streets into rivers of reflected neon. Daniel Reed sat in the driver's seat of the company car, engine idling, watching the last of the party guests stumble out of the Meridian Hotel's golden revolving doors. His hands rested on the steering wheel at 10 and 2, the same position they'd held for nearly 2 decades of professional driving. Some habits became part of your DNA. Through the rain-blurred window, he could see them laughing, these titans of industry reduced to giggling teenagers by premium champagne and top-shelf whiskey. The annual Hale Industries Anniversary Gala had been, by all accounts, a spectacular success. 500 guests, a 12-piece orchestra, ice sculptures that cost more than Daniel made in 3 months. He'd driven people to and from these events for 17 years. He knew the rhythm, the excessive tipping, the slurred thank yous, the occasional marriage proposal from someone who wouldn't remember his face come Monday morning. Daniel had learned to smile politely, accept whatever they offered, and forget everything he'd witnessed by the time he pulled into his own driveway. That was the job. Professional invisibility. His phone buzzed against the center console. A text from Marcus, head of security. CEO needs a ride. You available? Daniel glanced at the clock. 11:47 p.m. Lily would be asleep by now, safe with Mrs. Chen from 4B who watched her on nights like these. His daughter was used to his irregular hours, had been since her mother left when she was 2. 7 years of just the two of them, building a life from the wreckage of abandonment. On my way, he typed back. He pulled the sedan up to the hotel entrance, ignoring the honk from a taxi he'd cut off. The doorman, Gerald, who Daniel had been greeting for the better part of 2 decades, gave him a knowing nod. She's in rough shape tonight, Gerald said quietly, opening the rear door. Anniversary of her father's passing. She doesn't usually... He didn't finish. Didn't need to. Victoria Hale emerged from the hotel lobby like a ship taking on water. Her silver evening gown, which had probably looked stunning 6 hours ago, now hung slightly askew. Her carefully styled blonde hair had begun to escape its pins, but it was her eyes that told the real story. Red-rimmed, unfocused, swimming in something that looked less like intoxication and more like drowning. She was 42 years old and ran a company worth $1.3 billion. Tonight, she could barely stand. Ms. Hale, Daniel said, moving to steady her elbow. Let me help you. She looked at him, really looked at him, for what might have been the first time in 5 years of him driving her to board meetings and airport runs and the occasional personal errand. Daniel, she said, his name thick on her tongue. You have kind eyes. Has anyone ever told you that? Let's get you home, ma'am. The drive to her Lincoln Park brownstone should have taken 20 minutes. Daniel made it in 15, navigating the rain-slicked streets with the expertise of someone who knew every shortcut, every timing of every light. In the back seat, Victoria had gone quiet, not sleeping, but somewhere close. He watched her in the rear-view mirror, this woman who signed his paychecks, who he'd heard give presentations that could make investors weep with enthusiasm, now curled against the leather upholstery like a child. He would have been 79 today, she said suddenly. My father. Daniel kept his eyes on the road. I'm sorry for your loss, Ms. Hale. Everyone called him a visionary, a genius, a pioneer. Her laugh was bitter, broken. No one called him a father. Because he wasn't, not really. He was married to the company, and when he died, he left it all to me, like it was some kind of consolation prize for a childhood I never got to have. This was dangerous territory. Daniel had spent his entire career perfecting the art of professional distance. You didn't get involved in their lives. You didn't offer opinions on their choices. You certainly didn't become their confidant. But there was something in her voice that bypassed all his carefully constructed walls. Pure, unfiltered pain. I'm sure he loved you the best way he knew how, Daniel offered quietly. The best way he knew how wasn't good enough. They pulled up to her brownstone, a stunning 3-story building that probably cost more than Daniel would make in 10 lifetimes. The neighborhood was quiet, elegant, the kind of place where even the trees looked expensive. Rain continued its relentless assault on the city. Daniel put the car in park and came around to open her door. Victoria tried to stand, made it about halfway, and would have collapsed if he hadn't caught her. Easy, he said. I've got you. She leaned against him, all 5'7" of her suddenly dependent on his stability. He could smell her perfume, something French, and probably outrageously expensive, mixed with champagne and desperation. My keys, she mumbled. Purse, maybe. I don't... Daniel spotted her clutch on the car seat, retrieved it, and found her keys. The front door was solid oak, the kind that spoke of old money and older traditions. He got it open, then faced a decision that would change everything. He could leave her here, prop her against the door frame, make sure she was inside, and go. That would be the safe choice, the professional choice. But the house was dark, empty. And Victoria Hale, CEO of a billion-dollar empire, could barely keep her eyes open. Daniel thought of Lily, thought of what he'd want someone to do if she ever needed help, and he wasn't there. Come on, he said gently. Let's get you inside. The interior of her home was exactly what he'd expected. Hardwood floors, artwork that belonged in museums, furniture that whispered rather than shouted wealth. He helped her to the living room, lowering her onto a leather couch that probably cost more than his car. Water, he said. You need water. He found the kitchen, all marble and stainless steel, and filled a glass. When he returned, Victoria had managed to remove her heels and was staring at nothing, tears tracking mascara down her cheeks. I'm so tired, she whispered. So tired of being strong, of being the one who has to have all the answers, of being alone, Daniel finished quietly. She looked up at him, and for a moment something passed between them. Not attraction, not romance, just recognition. Two people who understood what it meant to carry weight no one else could see. Drink this, he said, handing her the water. All of it. She obeyed like a child, then set the glass down carefully on the coffee table. You're a good man, Daniel Reed, she said. I don't tell you that enough. I don't tell anyone anything enough. That's the problem with being at the top. Everyone thinks you have it all figured out. No one thinks you might be just as lost as they are. You should sleep, Ms. Hale. Victoria, she corrected. Tonight, just... Victoria. He nodded. You should sleep, Victoria. Don't leave, she said suddenly, grabbing his wrist with surprising strength. Her eyes were wide, frightened. Please, I don't want to be alone, not tonight. Just stay, please. Every alarm in Daniel's head went off simultaneously. This was exactly the kind of situation that could be misinterpreted, misconstrued, weaponized. He should leave. He absolutely should leave. But she was terrified. Actually terrified. I'll stay until you fall asleep, he heard himself say. But then I need to go home to my daughter. Relief flooded her features. Thank you. He helped her to her bedroom, tastefully decorated in shades of cream and gold, and made sure she was situated safely on top of the covers, still fully dressed. He found a throw blanket in a nearby chair and draped it over her. You're safe, he said. I promise. She was asleep before he finished the sentence. Daniel returned to the living room and sat on the couch, pulling out his phone. A text from Mrs. Chen. Lily's sleeping like an angel. Take your time. He set an alarm for midnight, 15 minutes away. He'd stay until then, just to make sure Victoria didn't need anything, then slip out quietly. No one would ever need to know he'd been here beyond driving her home. The house settled around him with the particular quiet of expensive real estate. Rain continued its percussion against the windows. Daniel closed his eyes, just for a moment. Just for a moment. The alarm never went off. His phone had died somewhere around 12:30 a.m., battery finally giving up after a 16-hour shift. Daniel didn't wake until 6:17 a.m. when pale morning light crept through the blinds and his driver's instinct, honed by years of early airport runs, jolted him awake. "Oh no," he breathed, sitting up too quickly. "No, no, no." He'd fallen asleep. On his boss's couch. In his boss's house. Daniel stood, his back protesting the night spent on furniture not designed for 6'2" frames. He needed to leave. Now. Before this turned into something that could be... What the hell? He spun around. Victoria stood in the bedroom doorway, still in her evening gown, hair wild, makeup smeared. But her eyes were clear now, clear and confused and increasingly alarmed. "Daniel?" She looked around her living room as if seeing it for the first time. "What? Why are you..." "Ms. Hale, I can explain. Why are you in my house?" Her voice rose, panic threading through each word. "What happened last night?" "You asked me to drive you home. You were very intoxicated. I helped you inside and what?" She took a step back, arms wrapping around herself. Did we... The question hung in the air like a guillotine. Daniel felt something cold slide down his spine. He recognized that look, that tone. He'd seen it in movies, read about it in news articles. The moment before everything good in someone's life gets destroyed by implication and fear. "No," he said firmly. "Absolutely not. You asked me not to leave you alone. You were upset about your father. I stayed on the couch to make sure you were safe. That's all. I swear to you, that is all that happened." Victoria pressed her fingers to her temples, trying to piece together a night that alcohol had stolen from her memory. I can't remember. The party, and then... You had a lot to drink. I drove you home. You couldn't find your keys. I helped you inside, got you water, made sure you were safe in your room. I was going to leave once you fell asleep, but He gestured helplessly at the couch. "I fell asleep. My phone died. I'm so sorry. This looks terrible. I know it does, but I promise you, you didn't touch me." It wasn't a question anymore. It was something else. A statement searching for confirmation. "No, ma'am. I didn't touch you. I would never..." The sound of a camera shutter cut through his words. Both of them turned toward the window. Outside, barely visible through the sheer curtains, someone was lowering a phone. A woman in jogging clothes, early morning runner who'd apparently decided that a man leaving Victoria Hale's brownstone at 6:20 a.m. was worth documenting. "Wait!" Daniel moved toward the door, but the woman was already gone, jogging down the street with evidence of something that hadn't happened. Evidence of a crime that was never committed. Evidence that looked to anyone without context like exactly what it wasn't. Victoria sank onto the couch, her face pale. "This is bad." "It was innocent," Daniel said, even as he felt the foundation of his life beginning to crack. "Nothing happened." "It doesn't matter what happened," Victoria said quietly. "It matters what it looks like. And Daniel, this looks..." She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Daniel's phone, which he'd plugged into a charger he'd found in his car, buzzed back to life. Immediately, it erupted with notifications, texts, missed calls, alerts from social media platforms he barely used. With shaking hands, he opened the first message. It was from Marcus, head of security. "Call me immediately." The second was from another driver. "Dude, what did you do?" The third included a link. Daniel clicked it. The photo was already going viral. Victoria Hale's brownstone, clearly identifiable. Daniel in his driver's uniform, visible through the window in the early morning light. The caption, "CEO's driver doing the walk of shame? Hale Industries scandal brewing?" In 6 hours, it had been shared 40,000 times. "I should go," Daniel said numbly. My daughter, I need to..." "Daniel." Victoria stood, and for a moment she looked like the CEO again. Composed. In control. "I'll handle this. I'll make a statement. I'll tell them exactly what happened." But even as she said it, they both knew the truth. In the court of public opinion, explanations came too late and mattered too little. The damage was already done. Daniel made it to his car, hands shaking so badly he could barely get the key in the ignition. His phone continued its relentless buzzing, more messages, more notifications, the story spreading like wildfire through the company, through the industry, through the internet's insatiable appetite for scandal. He drove home on autopilot, barely seeing the streets he'd navigated thousands of times. When he pulled into his apartment complex parking lot, Mrs. Chen was waiting by his door, Lily beside her with her backpack ready for school. "Daniel," Mrs. Chen said carefully, people have been calling, reporters, I think. I didn't answer, but thank you for watching her," he said, his voice mechanical. "I'll take it from here." "Daddy!" Lily ran to him, wrapping her 9-year-old arms around his waist. "You're home. Mrs. Chen made pancakes. They had chocolate chips." He held his daughter like she was the only real thing in a world rapidly turning to smoke and mirrors. "That's great, sweetheart," he managed. That's really great." Mrs. Chen gave him a look that said she knew something was wrong but wouldn't ask with Lily present. "Call if you need anything." Inside their small 2-bedroom apartment, Daniel went through the motions of normal morning routine. He made Lily's lunch, checked her homework folder, braided her hair the way she liked it, even though his hands were shaking. "Are you okay, Daddy?" she asked, studying him with those too perceptive eyes. "You seem sad." "I'm fine, baby. Just tired. It was a long night." "Did you drive important people to important places?" "Something like that." He walked her to the bus stop, waved as she climbed aboard, watched the yellow vehicle carry away the only pure thing in his life. Then he returned to the apartment and finally let himself look at the damage. The photo had exploded across social media. The comments were vicious, creative in their cruelty. Guess we know how he kept his job for 17 years. CEO and the help. Tale as old as time. Wonder how long this has been going on. Gold digger spotted. She's worth billions. He drives a car. Do the math. Disgusting. He probably planned this whole thing. Someone had dug up his LinkedIn profile, his Facebook page, photos of him with Lily at her soccer games, at the park, at her last birthday party. His daughter's face now circulating among strangers who were building narratives about a man they'd never met. His phone rang, the company HR director. "Daniel, we need you to come in for a meeting," she said, her voice professionally neutral. "Today, as soon as possible." "I didn't do anything wrong," he said. "I understand, but given the attention this is receiving, we need to follow protocol. It's just temporary, until we can sort everything out." "Temporary what?" A pause. "Suspension. With pay. Just until... I've worked for this company for 17 years. I've never been late, never complained, never caused a single problem. And you're suspending me because I made sure my boss got home safely?" "Daniel, I'm sorry. I truly am, but my hands are tied. There are optics to consider. Board members are already calling. We have investors concerned about..." He hung up. For a long moment, Daniel sat in his kitchen, in the apartment he'd worked so hard to provide, surrounded by the life he'd built from nothing through pure determination and integrity. Then he did something he hadn't done since the day his wife walked out. He put his head in his hands and let himself break. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. The sun was coming out. But for Daniel Reed, the storm was just beginning. The story was out there now, spreading, mutating, growing teeth with every share, every comment, every assumption. And the only thing he had to fight it with was the truth. In a world that had already decided what it wanted to believe, the truth seemed like a very small weapon indeed. The HR meeting took place in a windowless conference room on the 3rd floor, the kind of space designed to make difficult conversations feel official and inevitable. Daniel sat across from Jennifer Martinez, the HR director, and 2 people he'd never met before, a lawyer from the company's legal team and someone from corporate communications whose name he immediately forgot. Jennifer slid a document across the table. "This is just a formality. Paid administrative leave while we conduct an internal investigation. 2 weeks, maybe 3. Just until the media attention dies down and we can get a clear picture of what happened." Daniel didn't touch the paper. "You want a clear picture? I'll give you one. I drove Ms. Hale home because she was intoxicated. I made sure she got inside safely. I stayed on the couch because she asked me not to leave her alone. Nothing inappropriate happened. That's the picture." The lawyer, Thompson, according to his nameplate, leaned forward. Mr. Reed, we're not accusing you of anything, but you have to understand the position this puts the company in. There's already been significant social media backlash. We've had 3 journalists call this morning alone. The optics are... I don't care about optics, Daniel interrupted. I care about the truth. The truth is irrelevant if it can't be proven, Thompson said flatly. And right now, all we have is a photograph that suggests... It doesn't suggest anything except that I was in her house in the morning, which I've explained. Jennifer's expression softened. Daniel, we know you. Your record is impeccable. But we have to follow protocol. Sign the leave paperwork, go home, stay away from social media, and let us handle this. In a few weeks, this will all blow over. He looked at the document, at the signature line that would make this real. And if I don't sign? The room went quiet. Then we'll have to consider it insubordination, Thompson said, which would give us grounds for immediate termination, without the paid leave benefits. Is that really the route you want to take? Daniel thought of Lily, of her school expenses, her soccer league fees, the rent that was due in 12 days. He thought of the small college fund he'd been building, dollar by dollar, for the past 9 years. He signed. Good, Jennifer said, relief evident in her voice. Now please, Daniel, stay off social media. Don't talk to reporters. Don't try to defend yourself publicly. Let our team handle the messaging. What messaging? He asked. Are you going to tell people the truth? We're going to issue a statement saying the matter is under internal review and that we take all allegations seriously, even though no formal allegations have been made, the communications person said. It's standard crisis management. That makes me sound guilty. It makes us sound responsible, Thompson corrected. There's a difference. Daniel stood, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. I did the right thing. I helped someone who needed help. And this is what I get. No one had an answer for that. He walked out of the building he'd entered thousands of times, past security guards who wouldn't meet his eyes, past co-workers who suddenly found their phones fascinating. The whispers started before he reached the elevator. In the parking garage, he sat in his car, not the company sedan, but his own 12-year-old Honda, and watched his life continue to unravel in real time on his phone. The story had evolved, mutated. Someone had found Victoria's divorce records from 8 years ago. Someone else had uncovered that Daniel's wife had left him. A narrative was forming, pieces that didn't fit being forced together anyway. Lonely CEO and desperate single dad. Both vulnerable, both looking for connection, both making bad choices. A gossip site had already run an anonymous source claiming they'd seen Daniel and Victoria having coffee together 6 months ago. It was a lie. Daniel had never had coffee with her, had barely spoken to her beyond professional pleasantries in 17 years. But the lie fit the story people wanted to believe, so it spread faster than any correction could hope to travel. His phone rang. A number he didn't recognize. Against his better judgment, he answered. Mr. Reed, this is Amanda Chen from Chicago Tribune. I'm writing a piece about the allegations surrounding you and Victoria Hale, and I wanted to get your side of the story. There are no allegations, Daniel said, and there is no story. I drove my boss home, that's all. So you're denying that you spent the night at a residence? I'm not denying anything because nothing happened that requires denying. Sources say you've been seen entering her home on multiple occasions. What sources? Who? I've driven her to events, to meetings, to her home. Yes, that's my job. I'm her driver. Were you romantically involved with Ms. Hale? No. Did you sleep with Ms. Hale? This conversation is over. He hung up, hands shaking with rage. They were twisting everything, every professional interaction, every routine aspect of his job, being reframed through the ugliest possible lens. Another call. Another reporter. Then another. Daniel turned off his phone. He drove home through midday traffic, the city he'd navigated for 2 decades suddenly feeling foreign and hostile. When he pulled into his apartment complex, a woman was waiting by his building entrance. Professional clothes, camera bag, press credentials hanging around her neck. Mr. Reed, just a few questions. He walked past her without responding, keys already in hand. Is it true you've been secretly dating Victoria Hale? How long has the affair been going on? Daniel stopped, turned slowly. There is no affair. There's never been an affair. I helped a drunk person get home safely. That's called being a decent human being. The reporter's eyes lit up. She was recording. So you admit she was drunk. Did you take advantage of her intoxicated state? Get away from my home, Daniel said quietly. I have a daughter inside. The public has a right to know. The public has a right to nothing, especially not lies. He went inside, locked the door, and leaned against it. Through the peephole, he could see the reporter making a phone call, probably to her editor, probably already spinning his words into something they weren't. Mrs. Chen appeared in the hallway, concern etched deep in her face. Daniel, what's happening? That woman has been here for an hour, and people keep calling the building manager asking about you. It's a misunderstanding, he said. It'll blow over. But he could see she didn't believe him. Could see the doubt creeping in even here, with a woman who'd known him for 7 years, who'd watched Lily grow up, who'd never had reason to question his character. That was the insidious thing about rumors. They infected everything, made people wonder, made them look at familiar faces and see strangers. Lily gets home at 3:30, Mrs. Chen said carefully. Maybe she should come to my apartment today until things settle down. No, Daniel said more sharply than intended. She comes home. To me. Like always. Mrs. Chen nodded, but her expression said what her words didn't. She was worried about what Lily might hear, what she might see, what damage was being done to a 9-year-old girl whose father was being destroyed by speculation. Daniel made it to his apartment, locked himself inside, and finally let himself look at the full scope of the disaster. Twitter was a wasteland of hot takes and moral outrage. Facebook groups dedicated to corporate scandals had picked up the story. Someone had started a Reddit thread analyzing every photo they could find of Daniel and Victoria, looking for evidence of a relationship that didn't exist. And the company, his company, where he'd worked for 17 years, had issued their statement. Hale Industries takes all workplace conduct matters seriously. We are conducting a thorough internal investigation and will take appropriate action based on our findings. The employee in question has been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of this review. The employee in question, not Daniel Reed, who had perfect attendance. Not Daniel, who had won Driver of the Year 4 times. Not Daniel, who had literally saved a board member's life by knowing CPR when the man had a heart attack in the back seat 3 years ago. Just the employee in question. His phone, still off, began to vibrate with such frequency that he finally turned it back on just to stop the noise. 63 missed calls, over 200 text messages. His voicemail was full. Most were from reporters, but some were from people he knew, people he'd worked with, and those were somehow worse. Hey man, just wanted to say I don't believe what they're saying. You're a good guy. Daniel, if you need anything, let me know. This is crazy. Dude, seriously? With the CEO? What were you thinking? That last one was from Marcus, head of security. Someone Daniel had considered a friend. What were you thinking? As if he'd done something wrong. As if there was anything to think about beyond helping another human being. Daniel started typing a response, then deleted it. Then started again. Then deleted again. What could he say? How did you defend yourself against assumptions? Against photographs that told a story without context? Against a narrative that fed into every stereotype about power dynamics and ambitious men and wealthy women? He couldn't. That was the answer. He couldn't. So he did the only thing he could do. He cleaned the apartment. He did laundry. He prepared Lily's favorite dinner, spaghetti with the meat sauce she loved, garlic bread, salad with extra cherry tomatoes. He set the table carefully, making everything as normal as possible. When 3:30 arrived, he was waiting by the window. The school bus pulled up right on time. Lily bounded off, backpack bouncing, talking animatedly with another girl from her class. Normal. Everything was still normal in her world. She came through the door like a small hurricane, dropping her backpack in the hallway despite his repeated reminders about the coat closet. Daddy! We learned about fractions today and Mrs. Patterson said I was really good at them. And can I have a snack because I'm starving? And oh, Jessica invited me to her birthday party next Saturday. Can I go, please? Daniel knelt down, pulling her into a hug that lasted maybe a second too long. Daddy? She pulled back, studying his face. What's wrong? Nothing, baby. Just missed you today. You always miss me during the day. That's what work is. You're right. You're absolutely right. He stood, ruffled her hair. Go wash your hands. Snacks on the table. She ran off, already chattering about something that happened at recess. Daniel watched her go, this perfect little person who trusted him completely, who believed unquestioningly in his goodness. He would protect that. Whatever else happened, he would protect her from this ugliness. Lily was halfway through her apple slices when she said, "Daddy, what's scandal mean?" Daniel's blood went cold. Where did you hear that word? Jessica's mom was talking on the phone when she picked Jessica up. She said something about scandals and your name. Lily frowned. Are you in trouble? He sat down across from her, choosing his words carefully. Some people are saying things about me that aren't true. Grown-up stuff. But it's nothing for you to worry about. What kind of things? Just misunderstandings. Sometimes people get the wrong idea about something, and it takes a while to fix it. Like when Mrs. Patterson thought I cheated on my spelling test because I did too good? Exactly like that, remember? We explained that you studied really hard and she understood, and everything was fine. But people were mean to me for a whole week before she said sorry. I know, baby. Are people being mean to you? Daniel forced a smile. Some people are, but I have you, and that makes everything better. She seemed satisfied with that answer, returning to her snack. But Daniel saw the worry in her eyes, the way she kept glancing at him when she thought he wasn't looking. They made it through dinner, through homework, through her evening cartoons. Daniel went through all the motions, but part of him was somewhere else, watching his reputation burn down in real time across social media platforms he couldn't stop checking. By 8 p.m., the story had evolved again. A body language expert had analyzed the photograph, declaring that Daniel's posture suggested guilt and deception. A relationship therapist weighed in on the power dynamics between CEOs and their employees. A legal analyst discussed potential sexual harassment implications. None of them knew anything, but that didn't stop them from talking. After Lily went to bed, Daniel sat in his darkened living room and let himself feel the full weight of it. The injustice, the helplessness, the suffocating realization that he had no control over any of this. He'd done everything right. He'd lived a clean life, worked hard, been a good father, helped people when they needed it, and it meant nothing. One photograph, stripped of context, had erased 17 years of integrity. His phone buzzed, a text from a number he didn't recognize. You don't know me, but I work at Hale Industries. What you did was disgusting. You should be ashamed. Then another. Gold-digging loser. Hope you lose everything? Then another. Your daughter must be so proud of her daddy, the homewrecker. That last one made him throw his phone across the room, where it hit the wall with a crack that probably meant a broken screen. He didn't care. Let it break. Let everything break. Except it already had. The next morning, Daniel woke to find that the story had jumped from social media to legitimate news outlets. Local news. Then regional. Then, horrifyingly, national. Billionaire CEO's driver scandal rocks Hale Industries, read one headline. Inappropriate relationship alleged between Victoria Hale and employee, claimed another. The word alleged was doing a lot of heavy lifting, creating the appearance of journalism while spreading speculation as fact. Daniel made breakfast for Lily, scrambled eggs and toast, and tried to act like everything was normal. But when his daughter asked why he wasn't going to work, he had to invent an excuse about vacation days and caught up paperwork. She didn't quite believe him. He could tell. But she was 9, and 9-year-olds wanted to believe their parents, so she accepted the explanation. The real test came at the bus stop. 3 other parents were there, people Daniel had exchanged pleasantries with for years. People who'd attended the same school functions, the same parent-teacher conferences, the same end-of-year celebrations. When they saw him coming, their conversation stopped. Just stopped, mid-sentence, like someone had hit pause on reality. "Morning," Daniel said, trying to sound normal. 2 of them managed weak smiles. The third, Jessica's mother, pulled her daughter closer and turned away deliberately. "Mrs. Martinez," Lily said, waving, "Daddy said I can come to Jessica's party." "We'll see, honey," Mrs. Martinez said, not looking at Daniel. "We might need to keep it small this year." The message was clear. His daughter wasn't welcome anymore. Not because of anything she'd done, because of what people thought he'd done. Lily's face fell. She was smart enough to understand rejection even if she didn't understand why. The bus arrived, mercifully ending the interaction. Daniel watched Lily climb aboard, saw her slump into a seat alone when Jessica deliberately sat with another friend. He stood at the bus stop long after it pulled away, watching the taillights disappear, feeling something crack inside his chest. By noon, 3 more media outlets had called. A tabloid offered him $15,000 for an exclusive interview. A podcast wanted him to tell his side of the story on their show about workplace scandals. Everyone wanted a piece of the narrative. No one wanted the truth. Daniel's phone rang again. This time it was Victoria. He stared at the screen for 3 rings before answering. "Daniel," she said, her voice tight. "We need to talk." "I don't think that's a good idea, Ms. Hale. Talking to you is what got me into this mess. I just got out of an emergency board meeting. They're pushing for your termination. They think keeping you on, even suspended, looks bad for the company. So fire me. Add it to the list of ways this has destroyed my life." I told them no. I told them exactly what happened, that you did nothing wrong, that you were being a decent human being. And did they believe you? Silence. "Some of them did," she finally said. "Others think I'm covering for you, or for myself, or that I'm not remembering clearly because I was intoxicated. The lawyer is advising we cut ties completely to limit liability." "Then do it." "Daniel, what do you want from me, Ms. Hale? You want me to say it's okay? That I understand? I don't. I helped you. I made sure you were safe. And now my daughter is being ostracized at school. Reporters are camped outside my apartment, and I'm being called a predator by people who've never met me. I know. I'm sorry. Your apology doesn't fix this. Nothing fixes this. The story is out there. It's metastasized. And the truth doesn't matter because the truth is boring and the lie is interesting." He could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. Shaky. Uncertain. "There has to be something we can do," she said. "There isn't. You know it and I know it. So just do what you need to do. Fire me. Issue a statement. Protect your company. I'll figure out the rest." "Daniel, please." He hung up. For a long moment, he sat in his living room, in the apartment that suddenly felt like a trap, surrounded by the life he'd built that was crumbling one brick at a time. Then he did something he'd been avoiding. He opened his laptop and read the comments. Every single one. All the vitriol and speculation and judgment from strangers who knew nothing but felt entitled to everything. He read them until the words blurred together, until he felt hollowed out and numb. And somewhere in that darkness, a dangerous thought took root. Maybe silence was the wrong strategy. Maybe he needed to fight back. But fight with what? He had no platform, no money for lawyers, no connections to media. He had the truth, and the truth had proven to be the weakest weapon of all. So Daniel did the only thing left to do. He stopped fighting. He stopped explaining. He stopped caring what strangers thought. He picked Lily up from school himself that day, ignoring the stares from other parents. He took her for ice cream, her favorite chocolate chip and a waffle cone. He listened to her talk about fractions and recess and a book she was reading about a girl who could talk to animals. He gave her normalcy, or as close to it as he could manage. That night, after she was asleep, Daniel sat at his kitchen table and wrote down everything that had happened. Every detail, every conversation, every moment from the night that had destroyed his life. He wrote it not for publication or defense, but for himself. For Lily, in case she ever needed to know the truth. For the record, so that somewhere, in some form, the actual events would exist untainted by speculation. When he finished, it was 3 a.m. He saved the document, backed it up, and then sat staring at his broken phone screen. The notifications had slowed. The story was starting to age out of the news cycle. In a day or two, something new would capture the internet's attention. Some fresh scandal. Some different person to crucify. But the damage would remain, the stain on his reputation, the questions that would follow him. The whispers whenever he walked into a room. Daniel Reed, who'd spent 17 years building a life based on integrity, had learned a hard truth. Character doesn't protect you from character assassination. And silence, no matter how dignified, sounds an awful lot like guilt to people who've already decided what they want to believe. The rain started again sometime around 4 a.m. Daniel listened to it drum against the windows, washing nothing clean, changing nothing, just falling, because that's what rain does. In 12 hours, Lily would wake up. She'd need breakfast and lunch packed and someone to French braid her hair for school pictures. She'd need a father who was present, who was strong, who could pretend that everything was fine. Daniel could do that. He'd been doing it for 7 years since the day his wife walked out. He could keep doing it for as long as necessary, even if inside he was breaking, even if the weight of undeserved shame was crushing him slowly, methodically, publicly. He could endure. He had to. Because giving up wasn't an option when you had a 9-year-old daughter who still believed her father could fix anything, even things that were irreparably broken. The rain had stopped by the time Lily's alarm went off, but the sky remained gray, heavy with the threat of more to come. Daniel had maybe slept 2 hours, his mind caught in an endless loop of replaying that night, searching for the moment where he could have made a different choice, saved himself from this nightmare. There was no such moment. Every decision had been the right one. That was the cruelest part. He made pancakes shaped like Mickey Mouse, Lily's favorite, and watched her eat them while chattering about picture day. She'd chosen her blue dress with the white collar, the one that made her look older than 9, and wanted her hair in a French braid because that's what the big girls do. "You'll be the prettiest one there," Daniel said, working his fingers through her dark hair, the same color his had been before stress started threading it with silver. "Mrs. Martinez said Jessica can't come to my birthday party," Lily said suddenly, her voice small. "She said their family is busy that day." Daniel's hands stilled. Lily's birthday was 6 weeks away. No one was busy 6 weeks in advance unless they were making a point. "That's okay, baby. We'll have plenty of other friends there." "She also said I can't come to Jessica's party anymore because," Lily twisted in her chair to look at him, "because of the bad things people are saying about you." The pancakes turned to ash in Daniel's throat. "Lily, are they true? The things people are saying?" He knelt down so they were eye level. "No, none of it is true. I helped my boss get home safely when she wasn't feeling well. That's all. Some people are making it into something it's not." "Why would they do that?" "Because sometimes people like stories more than they like truth. And stories about good people doing bad things are more interesting than stories about good people doing good things." She considered this with the seriousness only a 9-year-old could muster. "That's stupid." "Yeah, baby, it really is." After Lily left for school, Daniel sat in the silence of his apartment and waited for the other shoe to drop. It came at 10:47 a.m. in the form of an email from HR. The investigation had been expedited. They needed him to come in for a follow-up meeting. Today. 2 p.m. He knew what that meant. He'd been around long enough to recognize the corporate kiss of death when he saw it. Daniel arrived at Hale Industries 15 minutes early, a habit so ingrained he couldn't break it even for his own execution. The building looked the same as always, glass and steel and the kind of modern architecture that was supposed to inspire innovation. He'd walked through these doors thousands of times. Today might be the last. Jennifer Martinez was waiting in the same windowless conference room, but this time she wasn't alone. Thompson, the lawyer, sat to her right, and across from them sat Victoria Hale. She looked different than she had at the party. Professional, controlled, the CEO armor fully in place, but when their eyes met, Daniel saw something flicker there. Guilt, maybe, or regret, or just the uncomfortable awareness that she was about to watch a good man lose everything for helping her. "Daniel, please sit," Jennifer said. He remained standing. "Just tell me, am I fired?" "The board has reviewed all available information," Thompson began, his voice as flat and emotionless as a legal document. "And while we found no direct evidence of misconduct, because there was no misconduct, the situation has created significant reputational concerns for the company. Our stock dropped 3% yesterday. We've received hundreds of emails from concerned customers and investors. The media attention shows no signs of abating. So I'm being fired for optics." "You're being offered a severance package," Thompson corrected, sliding papers across the table. 6 months' salary, continuation of health benefits for a year, a neutral reference letter. In exchange, you sign a non-disclosure agreement and agree not to pursue legal action against Hale Industries or Ms. Hale. Daniel looked at the papers. At the dollar amount that represented 17 years of loyalty, of perfect attendance, of doing everything right. 6 months. That was what his integrity was worth. And if I don't sign? Then we terminate for cause based on violation of company policy regarding appropriate professional boundaries, and you receive nothing. What violation? What boundaries? Thompson opened a folder. Company policy clearly states that employees should avoid situations that could create the appearance of impropriety. By spending the night at Ms. Hale's residence, you created such an appearance. I stayed on the couch to make sure she was safe. The policy doesn't distinguish between intent and perception. Daniel turned to Victoria. She'd been silent through the entire exchange, her hands folded carefully on the table, her expression professionally neutral. "You're really going to let them do this?" he asked. "You know what happened. You know I did nothing wrong." Victoria's jaw tightened. "I've told them everything. I've explained the situation multiple times, but I'm not the only voice on the board, and the board has to consider what's best for the company as a whole. What's best for the company is the truth." "The truth is complicated," Thompson interjected. "The truth requires context and explanation. The photograph requires neither. In the court of public opinion, I don't care about the court of public opinion," Daniel said. "I care about actual justice, actual fairness. I did my job. I did it well for 17 years, and now you want to erase all of that because of one night where I made the mistake of being a decent human being." The room fell silent. Victoria looked down at her hands. Jennifer shifted uncomfortably. Only Thompson remained unmoved, a lawyer doing lawyer things, reducing human lives to acceptable risk calculations. "The offer stands until 5 p.m. today," Thompson said. "After that, we proceed with termination for cause." Daniel stared at the papers. 6 months of salary would cover his expenses while he looked for new work. The health insurance would protect Lily. The neutral reference might help him find another job, though he doubted any reference could compete with the first page of Google results for his name. But signing meant admitting, in some legal sense, that there was something to admit to. It meant accepting payment for silence, as if he had something to hide. "I need to think about it," he said. "You have until 5, Thompson repeated. Daniel walked out without another word. He made it to the parking garage, to his car, before the rage hit him full force. He slammed his hand against the steering wheel once, twice, 3 times, until his palm stung and the horn blared, and he didn't care who heard. 17 years. Gone. Not because he'd done anything wrong, but because he'd been photographed doing something that looked wrong to people who didn't know better and didn't care to learn. His phone buzzed. A text from a number he'd deleted but still recognized. His ex-wife. Saw the news. "This is exactly the kind of thing I was afraid of. You and your helping people. Look where it got you. I'm filing for full custody. Lily deserves better than this." Daniel read the message 3 times, each time finding new depths to the betrayal. Rachel had left 7 years ago because she couldn't handle the stress of motherhood, of being married to someone who worked long hours for modest pay. She'd sent birthday cards twice, missed every major event, contributed nothing to Lily's life except absence, and now she wanted custody. Not because she wanted Lily, because she wanted to hurt him. He didn't respond, couldn't. What would he even say? Instead, he drove. No destination in mind, just movement, the city scrolling past like scenery in someone else's life. He found himself in Lincoln Park, blocks from Victoria's brownstone, and realized he'd been navigating on autopilot, muscle memory from countless drives carrying him to the place that had destroyed everything. He parked across the street and stared at the building. It looked peaceful in the gray afternoon light, expensive, untouched by the chaos that had radiated outward from one night, one moment of misplaced kindness. His phone rang. Victoria. This time he didn't hesitate. "What do you want?" "Don't sign the papers," she said immediately. "Don't take the settlement." "Why?" "You were sitting right there. You let them do this." "Because I had to see what they were offering before I could make my next move. Daniel, I spent all of last night reviewing security footage from that night." Something in her tone made him sit up straighter. "What security footage?" "My house has cameras, front door, back door, living room, hallway, everything except the bedrooms and bathrooms. I forgot about them in all the chaos, but last night I couldn't sleep, and I kept thinking there had to be some way to prove what really happened. Daniel's heart started beating faster. And it shows everything. You helping me inside, you getting me water, you settling me in my room and leaving, you sleeping on the couch, never moving, never doing anything except exactly what you said you did. Hope, dangerous and painful, bloomed in his chest. That's evidence. That proves you're telling the truth, which I always knew, but now I can show everyone else. Why didn't you mention this in the meeting? Because Thompson and the board don't want evidence. They want this to go away quietly. If I'd brought up the footage, they would have found a way to suppress it, to claim privacy concerns or that it was inadmissible or some other legal nonsense. I need to control how and when this information comes out. Daniel gripped the phone tighter. So what now? Now you don't sign anything. You give me 24 hours, and you trust me. Trust. The word hung between them, heavy with irony. His trust had gotten him into this mess. His trust that doing the right thing mattered, that truth would prevail, that integrity was its own reward. Ms. Hale, Victoria, please. After everything, just Victoria. Victoria, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I have a daughter, I have bills. I can't afford to make dramatic stands on principle when my ex-wife is threatening to take my child and I might not have health insurance in a week. I know what I'm asking, but Daniel, if you sign those papers, you're letting them write the ending. You're accepting that guilt by association is justice, and I won't let that happen to someone who is only trying to help me. This isn't about you anymore. This is about my life. Then let me help you save it. 24 hours. That's all I'm asking. Daniel closed his eyes, weighing impossible options. The safe choice was obvious. Sign the papers, take the money, disappear into whatever quiet life he could build from the wreckage. The dangerous choice was trusting a woman he barely knew to fix a situation that seemed irreparably broken. What are you planning? He asked. Something I should have done from the beginning. The truth, all of it, public and unedited. She hung up before he could respond. Daniel sat in his car across from the brownstone that had become the epicenter of his destruction and tried to imagine what Victoria meant. The truth had been available all along. It hadn't mattered. Why would it matter now? But doubt, once planted, was hard to uproot. What if she really did have footage? What if there was a way to prove, definitively and irrefutably, that nothing had happened? What if the truth could actually win? He drove to Lily's school, arriving 20 minutes before dismissal. He sat in the pickup line, watching other parents arrive in their SUVs and minivans, chatting with each other, living normal lives where scandals were things that happened to other people. When Lily emerged, she ran to the car with her backpack bouncing, but her smile was forced. He could see the strain around her eyes. "How was picture day?" he asked as she buckled in. "Fine. The photographer said I had a pretty smile." "You do, the prettiest." They drove in silence for a few blocks before Lily said, "Some kids at recess were talking about you, about the pictures online. They said bad things." Daniel's hands tightened on the wheel. "What kind of things?" "That you're a bad person, that you did something wrong with your boss. I told them they were lying, but..." Her voice cracked. "Why won't anyone believe us, Daddy?" He pulled over, right there on a residential street, and turned to face his daughter. She was crying now, quiet tears that she was trying to hide by looking out the window. "Come here," he said. She unbuckled and climbed into the front seat, curling against him the way she had when she was little, and the world seemed too big and scary. "I need you to listen to me very carefully," Daniel said. "What people are saying isn't true. You know it's not true. I know it's not true. And soon, everyone else is going to know it too." "How?" "Because the truth has a way of coming out. It just takes time sometimes." "I hate waiting." "Me too, baby. Me too." They stayed like that for a long moment, father and daughter against the world, until Lily's tears stopped and she climbed back into her seat. That evening, Daniel made spaghetti again, comfort food for both of them, and they watched a movie about talking dogs. Anything to create a bubble of normalcy, a space where scandals and accusations couldn't reach. After Lily went to bed, Daniel opened his laptop and reread the settlement offer. 6 months salary, health insurance, a neutral reference, the easy way out. His phone buzzed with an email from Victoria. No subject line. Just a video file attachment and a single sentence. Watch this, then decide. Daniel downloaded the file. It took 3 minutes to load, and each second felt like an hour. The video opened on Victoria's front door, time-stamped 11:52 p.m. The angle was from above, capturing the entrance and part of the street. Daniel watched himself help Victoria out of the car, her stumbling, his steady support. The audio was clear enough to hear their conversation. Easy, I've got you. You're a good man, Daniel Reed. The footage continued. Inside the house now, multiple camera angles edited together. Daniel getting water. Victoria on the couch, crying, talking about her father. Daniel's careful movements, his professional distance, his obvious discomfort with the situation. Then the most crucial part, Victoria asking him to stay. Begging, actually, her fear of being alone palpable even through the camera. Daniel's reluctance, his eventual agreement, him helping her to her room, leaving immediately, returning to the couch. The footage showed him sitting there for 20 minutes, checking his phone, clearly waiting for her to fall asleep so he could leave. It showed the exact moment he closed his eyes, just for a second. Then sleep claiming him despite his best intentions. It showed a man doing nothing except trying to help someone who needed it. The video ended with mourning. Victoria emerging from her bedroom, confused and frightened. Daniel's immediate explanation. The fear in both their faces when they realized how this would look. It showed, frame by frame and second by second, the absolute truth. Daniel watched it twice, then a third time, then sat back, something releasing in his chest that he hadn't realized he'd been holding clenched for days. Evidence. Real, undeniable, uneditable evidence. Another email arrived. This one from Victoria's personal account, longer. Daniel, I've spent the last 3 days trying to work within the system, trying to convince the board, trying to manage the PR, trying to protect the company's reputation while also protecting you. But I've realized something. The system isn't designed for truth, it's designed for damage control. And you deserve better than being controlled damage. Tomorrow morning, I'm calling an all-hands meeting. Every employee, every department. I'm going to show them this footage. I'm going to tell them exactly what happened. And I'm going to make it very clear that the only person who acted with integrity that night was you. I know this puts you in an uncomfortable position. I know you might prefer to just take the settlement and move on, but I can't let you be punished for my mistake. I got drunk. I put you in an impossible situation, and you handled it with more grace and professionalism than I had any right to expect. The least I can do is make sure everyone knows that. You don't have to attend the meeting if you don't want to, but don't sign those papers. Not yet. Give me one chance to do the right thing, like you did. Victoria Daniel read the email 4 times, looking for the trap, the angle, the hidden cost, but he couldn't find one. It seemed genuine, desperate even, a powerful woman trying to use her power for something other than self-preservation. He thought about Lily, about the kids at school calling him a bad person. He thought about Mrs. Martinez and her sudden scheduling conflict. He thought about Marcus asking, "What were you thinking?" as if thinking had anything to do with basic human decency. He thought about 17 years of doing everything right, of building a life on integrity, of teaching his daughter that character mattered. And he thought about the settlement papers sitting on his kitchen table, his signature conspicuously absent. At 11:47 p.m., exactly 1 week after the night that destroyed his life, Daniel sent 2 emails. The first was to Thompson. I declined the settlement offer. I will not sign an NDA for telling the truth. The second was to Victoria. I'll be at the meeting. He slept better that night than he had in a week, not because he knew everything would be okay, but because he'd stopped trying to protect himself through silence. Sometimes the only way forward was straight through the fire. The next morning broke clear and bright, the kind of Chicago spring day that made you believe in new beginnings. Daniel dressed carefully, his best suit, the one he saved for funerals and job interviews. If he was going to face the company that had abandoned him, he'd do it looking like the professional he'd always been. Lily noticed immediately. "You look fancy, Daddy. Do you have an important meeting?" Something like that. "Are you going to tell them they're wrong about you?" "Someone is." She hugged him extra tight before getting on the bus. Be brave, she whispered. You too, baby. Daniel arrived at Hale Industries at 9:45 a.m. The meeting was scheduled for 10, all hands mandatory, with no explanation given. The parking garage felt strange now, familiar but foreign, like visiting a house you'd grown up in after new people had moved in. Security didn't stop him. Jennifer Martinez had sent word that he was expected, though her email had been curt and professional, betraying nothing about what was coming. He took the elevator to the 5th floor where the main conference hall could hold up to 200 people. Employees were already filing in, confused about the sudden assembly. Daniel saw familiar faces, drivers he'd worked with, dispatchers, administrative staff. Some nodded at him, others looked away. He found a seat in the back, trying to be invisible, but whispers spread through the room like wildfire. That's him. I can't believe he showed up. This is going to be uncomfortable. At exactly 10 a.m., Victoria walked onto the small stage at the front of the room. She was flanked by Jennifer Martinez and 2 board members Daniel recognized but had never spoken to. Thompson was notably absent. The room fell silent. Victoria approached the microphone, and for just a second, her eyes found Daniel's across the crowded space. Something passed between them. Solidarity, maybe. Or just mutual recognition of 2 people about to jump off a cliff together. Thank you all for coming on short notice, Victoria began. Her voice was steady, but Daniel could see her hand shaking slightly where they gripped the podium. I'm sure you've all seen the news this week. The photographs. The speculation. The damage to our company's reputation. People shifted uncomfortably. A few snuck glances at Daniel. I called this meeting because I owe you all the truth. Not a press release, not a carefully worded statement from our legal team. The actual truth about what happened last week. Victoria took a breath, then continued. After our anniversary gala, I got extremely intoxicated. More intoxicated than I've been in years. It was the anniversary of my father's death, and I handled my grief poorly. Daniel Reed, who has been a driver for this company for 17 years, drove me home. The room was absolutely silent now. When we arrived at my house, I couldn't find my keys. I could barely stand. Daniel helped me inside, got me water, made sure I was safe. And then, because I was frightened and grieving and not thinking clearly, I asked him not to leave me alone. Someone in the front row gasped softly. Daniel stayed, on my couch, fully clothed, never entering my bedroom after he made sure I was settled, never touching me, never doing anything except making sure I didn't hurt myself in my intoxicated state. Victoria paused, letting that sink in. He fell asleep on the couch. His phone died. In the morning, I woke up confused and frightened, and I asked him a terrible question. A question that implied he might have taken advantage of me. He hadn't. He had only helped me. But that question, combined with a photograph taken out of context, started a firestorm that has nearly destroyed a good man's life. She pressed a button on the podium. A screen lowered behind her. I'm going to show you security footage from that night, all of it, unedited, so you can see exactly what happened, and then I'm going to tell you what we're going to do about the injustice that has occurred. The video played. Every second that Daniel had watched the night before, now projected for 200 people to see. The room remained utterly silent throughout, the only sound the audio from the footage itself. When it ended, Victoria let the silence stretch for a long moment. Daniel Reed did nothing wrong, she said, her voice stronger now. He acted with integrity, professionalism, and basic human kindness, and in return, he has been subjected to public humiliation, professional suspension, and damage to his reputation that will follow him for years. That is unacceptable. Daniel saw people turning to look at him, not with judgment now, with something else. Shame, maybe, or recognition of their own complicity in rushing to conclusions. Effective immediately, Daniel is reinstated, with full back pay for his suspension, with a formal apology from this company, and with a promotion. Daniel's head snapped up. That wasn't part of any plan they'd discussed. Victoria continued, We're creating a new position, Director of Professional Standards and Ethics. Daniel Reed will be the first person to hold this position. His job will be to ensure that situations like this, where good people are punished for doing the right thing, never happen again at Hale Industries. The room erupted. Some applause, some shocked murmurs, Some angry whispers about special treatment. Victoria raised her hand for silence. I also want to address those who spread rumors, who shared speculation as fact, who participated in the character assassination of a colleague without evidence. There will be consequences. We're conducting our own internal investigation to determine who violated our code of conduct policies regarding workplace harassment and defamation. The murmurs turned nervous now. This company was built on principles, on integrity, on doing what's right even when it's difficult. We lost sight of those principles when we allowed assumptions to replace truth. That ends today. Victoria stepped back from the podium and looked directly at Daniel. I owe you an apology, she said, her voice carrying through the silent room, even without the microphone. For putting you in that situation, for not protecting you from the consequences, for letting this go on as long as it did. I'm sorry. Daniel stood slowly. Every eye in the room tracked his movement. He walked down the aisle, each step feeling surreal, until he reached the stage. Victoria extended her hand. He shook it, and the room exploded in applause. Not everyone was clapping, but enough were. Enough that Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in a week. Vindication. The applause continued, but Daniel barely heard it. He stood on that stage, shaking Victoria's hand, feeling like he'd stepped into someone else's life. Director of Professional Standards and Ethics. A promotion. Vindication delivered in front of 200 witnesses. But vindication, he was learning, didn't erase the damage. It just stopped the bleeding. Victoria released his hand and addressed the room again. The video I've shown you will be released to the media within the hour. Our communications team is preparing a statement, and I want to be very clear about something. Anyone who speaks to the press about this situation without authorization will be terminated immediately. Daniel has been through enough without having his story twisted further by unauthorized commentary. She paused, her gaze sweeping across the assembled employees. That said, if any of you participated in spreading false rumors, in sharing speculation as fact, or in contributing to the hostile environment that Daniel has faced this past week, I expect you to apologize to him directly. Not because I'm mandating it, but because it's the right thing to do. The room shifted uncomfortably. Daniel could see the guilt on some faces, defiance on others, and confusion on most. These were people who'd believed what they'd seen, what they'd read, what had seemed so obviously true based on a single photograph. Jennifer Martinez stepped forward. The meeting is concluded. Department heads, please stay behind for a brief follow-up. Everyone else, back to your stations. The crowd began to disperse, but slowly, with people glancing back at Daniel like he was a museum exhibit. Some approached tentatively. Marcus, head of security, was first. The same Marcus who'd texted, "What were you thinking?" now stood in front of Daniel with his jaw tight and his eyes down. "Man, I'm sorry," Marcus said. "I should have known better. You've been nothing but solid for as long as I've known you, and I let one picture make me forget all of that." Daniel wanted to be angry, wanted to hold on to the hurt of being doubted by someone he'd considered a friend. But looking at Marcus's genuine remorse, he found he couldn't sustain it. "It looked bad," Daniel admitted. "I get it. Looking bad isn't the same as being bad. I should have remembered that." Marcus extended his hand. "Congratulations on the promotion. You'll be good at it." They shook, and Daniel felt a small piece of his old life click back into place. Not perfect, not the same, but there. Others followed. Sarah from dispatch, who'd always remembered Lily's birthday. Tom, another driver who'd covered shifts when Lily was sick. Even some people Daniel barely knew, who approached with mumbled apologies and couldn't quite meet his eyes. But not everyone apologized. Some slipped out quickly, avoiding eye contact. And a few lingered in small groups, their expressions making clear they weren't convinced. That they thought this was corporate favoritism dressed up as justice. That they believed a billionaire CEO was protecting a man she'd been involved with. Evidence be damned. You couldn't change everyone's mind. Daniel was beginning to understand that. Victoria appeared at his elbow once the room had mostly cleared. "Can we talk?" "My office?" They rode the elevator in silence, the same elevator Daniel had taken countless times to drop off documents or keys or messages. But everything felt different now. The power dynamic had shifted in ways he couldn't quite name. Victoria's office was on the top floor, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. Daniel had been inside exactly 3 times in 17 years, always briefly, always in service of some errand. Now Victoria gestured to the leather chairs by the window, the informal meeting space rather than the imposing desk. "How are you?" she asked once they were seated. "Honestly, I don't know. Relieved, angry, confused, all of it at once." "I meant what I said down there. About the promotion. It's not charity or guilt. I've been thinking about this position for months, ever since we had that situation in accounting where someone reported harassment and it got buried by middle management. We need someone whose job is to make sure the right thing gets done, even when it's inconvenient, especially then." "And you think I'm qualified for that?" "I think you proved you're qualified when you stayed on my couch instead of leaving me alone and drunk. When you refused to sign the settlement and take the easy way out. When you showed up here this morning knowing it might go badly." Well, Victoria leaned forward. "Most people talk about integrity. You live it. That's what this position needs." Daniel looked out at the city sprawling below them, all those lives intersecting and diverging and continuing on, oblivious to the small dramas playing out in corporate conference rooms. "What about the people who don't believe the video?" he asked. "I saw their faces. Some of them think you're covering for me, or that I'm being rewarded for something I shouldn't have done in the first place. Then you'll prove them wrong, over time, through your actions." Victoria stood, walked to the window. "Daniel, I can't undo what happened this week. I can't erase the articles or delete the social media posts or take back the things people said about you, but I can give you a platform to show them who you really are, to set a standard for how this company operates. That's worth something, isn't it?" He thought about Lily, about the kids at school, about Mrs. Martinez's sudden scheduling conflict. Will it change anything outside these walls? The internet has already decided who I am. The internet has a short memory. Give it 2 weeks and there'll be a new scandal, a new target. People will forget. But I won't. Lily won't. Every time someone Googles my name, this will come up. Victoria turned from the window. Then you make sure the rest of your story is so much bigger and better that this becomes a footnote. A bad chapter in a good book. Not the whole story. It sounded reasonable when she said it like that. Logical. But Daniel had learned this past week that logic and emotion rarely occupied the same space, and his emotions were still raw and jagged and looking for something to cut. "I need to think about it," he said. "The position. All of it. Take the time you need. But Daniel, the offer is genuine, and it's there whether you decide to stay or go. You've earned that." He left her office with a folder containing the job description, salary information, a 40% increase from his driver wages, and a formal letter of apology from the company. On paper, it looked like justice. In his chest, it felt more complicated. His phone had been buzzing throughout the meeting. Now he looked at it properly. 17 missed calls, over 100 text messages. The video had gone live. The same platforms that had crucified him were now scrambling to contextualize, to backtrack, to explain why they'd been so quick to judge. Think pieces were already appearing. What the Hale Industries scandal teaches us about rush to judgment and when viral photos lie, the Daniel Reed case study, and CEO Victoria Hale's masterclass in corporate accountability. Daniel scrolled through them with a sense of detachment. These were the same outlets that had called him a predator, a gold digger, a manipulator. Now they were holding him up as a victim of cancel culture, a martyr to the age of social media judgment. He was neither. He was just a man who'd helped someone and paid a price for it. The fact that the price had been partially refunded didn't erase the debt. A text from Mrs. Chen. "Saw the news. So happy the truth came out. Lily can come to my apartment after school if you need time to process everything." Another from the school. "Mr. Reed, this is Principal Davidson. I wanted to personally apologize for not reaching out sooner when Lily was experiencing difficulties. If there's anything we can do to support her transition back to normal social interactions, please let us know." Transition back. As if you could just flip a switch and make 9-year-olds forget that they'd called someone's father a bad person. As if Lily hadn't spent a week feeling the sting of social exile. Daniel drove home, the city passing by in a blur of familiar streets that felt foreign now. Everything looked the same, but nothing was. He'd crossed some invisible threshold this past week, and there was no going back to who he'd been before. He was home by noon, too wired to sleep despite his exhaustion. He cleaned the apartment, did laundry, prepared Lily's lunch for tomorrow. Normal tasks in an abnormal time, anchoring himself to routine because routine was all he had. His phone rang, a number he recognized with a sick feeling, Rachel, his ex-wife. He almost didn't answer, but if she was still planning to file for custody, he needed to know. "I saw the video," Rachel said without preamble. "The news coverage. All of it. And? And I was wrong about what happened, about what I threatened." Daniel waited. Rachel had never been good at apologies. "I'm not going to file for custody," she continued. I was angry. I saw the headlines and I just reacted. But watching that footage, seeing how you handled that situation, it reminded me of why I married you in the first place. You're a good man, Daniel. I forgot that somewhere along the way. You left because I wasn't exciting enough, because I worked too much for too little. Being a good man wasn't enough then. Why should it matter now? It should have mattered then. I was young and stupid and scared of being ordinary. I thought I deserved something more than a decent man with a steady job. Turns out, that's exactly what Lily deserves. What she has. Daniel closed his eyes. 7 years of single parenthood, of figuring it out alone, of being both mother and father to a little girl who asked about her mom on birthdays and Christmas and random Tuesdays when the absence just hit harder. And now Rachel wanted to acknowledge it? "Why are you calling, Rachel?" "To say I'm sorry for what I said about custody, for not being there, for all of it." A pause, and to ask if maybe, sometime, I could see her. Not take her from you, just see her. Get to know her again. It would be so easy to say no, to slam that door and keep it closed, to protect Lily from the woman who'd walked away. But Daniel thought about the video, about the truth coming out, about the power of being given a second chance when you didn't deserve it. "That's not my decision alone," he said carefully. "Lily would have to want that. And it would have to be slow, supervised. You don't get to just walk back into her life like the past 7 years didn't happen." "I know. I'm not asking for that. I'm just asking for a chance." "I'll talk to Lily. She'll decide. But Rachel, if you do this, if you start being part of her life again, you don't get to leave a second time. She's already been abandoned once. I won't let you do it again." "I understand." After he hung up, Daniel sat in his kitchen and tried to process the strange twist his life had taken. This morning he'd been preparing to face the company that had abandoned him. Now he had a promotion, a public exoneration, and his ex-wife asking for forgiveness. None of it felt quite real. The afternoon crawled by. Daniel tried to read, to watch TV, to do anything that would occupy his mind until Lily got home. Nothing worked. He kept checking his phone, watching the story spread, seeing his name trend on social media platforms he didn't use. Some of the comments were supportive now, apologizing for their rush to judgment. Others were doubling down, insisting the video was staged, or that Victoria was lying, or that there was more to the story that wasn't being shown. You couldn't win them all. You couldn't even win most of them. You just had to win the ones that mattered. At 3:30, Daniel was waiting at the bus stop. The same parents were there, but the dynamic had shifted. Mrs. Martinez approached him tentatively. "Mr. Reed, I owe you an apology. I saw the news this morning. The video. I made assumptions about you based on gossip and a photograph, and I'm sorry. Jessica would still love to have Lily at her birthday party, if Lily still wants to come." Daniel studied her, looking for insincerity, but all he saw was genuine remorse. "I'd like that," he said. "Lily was really hurt when she couldn't go." "I know. I'm sorry for that too." Mrs. Martinez hesitated. "We live in such a quick judgment world now. Everyone has an opinion based on a headline. I should have known better. I should have known you." The bus arrived before Daniel could respond. Lily jumped off, saw her father, and ran into his arms with an enthusiasm that suggested something good had happened. "Daddy, everyone was talking about the video. My teacher showed it to the whole class because some kids were asking questions, and she said it was a good lesson about not believing everything you see on the internet." Daniel's stomach dropped. Your teacher showed your class the video of me and Ms. Hale. Well, she asked me first if it was okay, and I said yes because I wanted everyone to know you didn't do bad things. And afterward, Madison apologized for calling you mean names, and Jacob said his dad was wrong about you, and even Mr. Patterson, the gym teacher, said you were brave. She was beaming, proud of her father's vindication, too young to fully understand the complexity of having your personal nightmare become a classroom teaching tool. How do you feel about all that? Daniel asked carefully. I feel good. Everyone knows the truth now. You always tell me the truth is important, and now everyone can see you were telling the truth the whole time. In Lily's 9-year-old worldview, truth revealed was justice served. Simple, clean. The good guys won because the evidence proved they were good. Daniel wished he could see it that simply. That evening, over the spaghetti dinner that had become their comfort ritual, Lily chattered about school, about Jessica's party being back on, about how she was going to get to be in the spring musical after all, because Mrs. Patterson had talked to the drama teacher about giving her another audition. Normal. Everything sliding back toward normal, like the past week had been an aberration, a glitch in the matrix quickly corrected. After Lily went to bed, Daniel sat down with the folder Victoria had given him. Director of Professional Standards and Ethics. The job description read like a wish list, establishing protocols for misconduct reporting, ensuring transparent investigation processes, creating training programs on workplace integrity, serving as an advocate for employees who faced retaliation for doing the right thing. It was everything he'd wish had existed this past week, a position designed specifically to prevent what had happened to him from happening to anyone else. The salary was substantial, enough to move them to a better apartment, to build Lily's college fund faster, to stop worrying about unexpected expenses. It was the kind of opportunity that could change their lives, but it meant staying at Hale Industries, working alongside people who doubted him, seeing the whispers in his peripheral vision, the ones who still weren't convinced, building something new from the ashes of his old life. He thought about what Victoria had said. Make the rest of your story so much bigger that this becomes a footnote. His phone buzzed with an email. From a name he didn't recognize, but the subject line caught his attention. Thank you from another driver. Mr. Reed, you don't know me. I drive for a rideshare company in Seattle. I saw your story on the news. 3 years ago, something similar happened to me. I helped a drunk passenger get inside her apartment, stayed to make sure she was okay, fell asleep on her couch. She woke up and panicked, accused me of assault. I was fired immediately, never got to tell my side, never had evidence, never had a CEO willing to fight for the truth. I lost everything. My job, my reputation, my apartment, because I couldn't make rent. I'm still driving, but I'll never forget the fear of helping someone and being punished for it. Seeing you vindicated gives me hope that maybe the world is getting better at distinguishing between predators and protectors. Thank you for fighting. Thank you for proving that sometimes the good guys do win. Keep being the man you are. Daniel read the email 3 times. This driver in Seattle, whose name he didn't know, who'd suffered the same nightmare without the happy ending. How many others were there? How many people had been destroyed by good intentions and bad optics, and a system that prioritized protection from liability over pursuit of truth? He opened his laptop and began typing a response to Victoria's offer. I'll take the position. I'll take the... Not because I'm over what happened, not because the promotion makes up for the damage, but because maybe I can make sure it doesn't happen to the next person. Maybe that's what this was all for. Give me 2 weeks to train my replacement as a driver and get Lily adjusted to the new schedule. Then I'll start. He hit send before he could second-guess himself. Within 5 minutes, Victoria responded, "Thank you. You won't regret this." Daniel wasn't so sure about that. But regret and purpose weren't mutually exclusive. Sometimes the most important work came from the worst experiences. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange blur of transition. The media attention faded as Victoria had predicted, replaced by a political scandal and a celebrity breakup, and all the other momentary dramas that fed the internet's insatiable appetite. Daniel trained his replacement, a younger driver named Marcus, different Marcus, no relation to the security chief, who listened intently to every detail about routes and client preferences and the unwritten rules of professional driving. "Why are you leaving?" young Marcus asked one day as they drove to pick up a board member from O'Hare. "I heard you were the best. 17 years, never a complaint." Sometimes the best thing you can do is know when it's time for something different, Daniel said. Even when you're good at what you do? Especially then. Being good at something doesn't mean it's all you're meant to do. He attended meetings about his new position, sitting in conference rooms with HR directors and legal teams and corporate trainers, building the framework for something that had never existed before. They wanted metrics and measurables and quantifiable outcomes. Daniel wanted something simpler, a place where people could tell the truth without fear of retaliation. The compromise they reached was both more and less than he'd hoped for. At home, Lily adjusted to the idea of a father who'd work regular hours for the first time in her life, who'd be home for dinner every night, who could coach her soccer team because weekend events wouldn't require him to drive executives to corporate retreats. "Does this mean you'll come to all my games?" she asked one night. "Every single one, unless you specifically tell me not to." "Why would I tell you not to come?" Sometimes when kids get older, they think their parents are embarrassing. Lily considered this seriously. "You're not embarrassing. You're brave. My teacher said so." Brave. Daniel wasn't sure he'd earned that word. He just tried to do the right thing and had gotten lucky that evidence existed to prove it. Bravery implied choice. He'd just been trying to survive. On his last day as a driver, Daniel cleaned out his locker in the garage. 17 years of accumulated items. Extra ties, phone chargers, breath mints, a photo of 5-year-old Lily at her first soccer game. The detritus of a life lived in service to others' schedules. Marcus, security Marcus, found him there. "Heard today's your last day on the road." "Yeah, new chapter." "You're going to be good at it, the ethics thing. You've got the moral compass for it." "I don't know about that. I just know what it feels like to be on the wrong end of assumptions." Marcus shifted his weight, uncomfortable. "Listen, I never properly apologized for that text, for doubting you. I let one picture override 17 years of knowing who you are. That was wrong. You apologized at the meeting. I know, but I needed to say it again when it's just us, man to man. You deserve better from me, from all of us." Daniel closed his locker for the last time. "The thing is, I understand why you doubted. I get it. The photo looked bad. The situation looked bad. And we live in a world where bad things happen so often that assuming the worst has become a survival instinct. That doesn't make it right. No, it doesn't. But it makes it human. And the new position I'm taking, it's about creating systems that don't rely on everyone being perfectly fair and perfectly logical all the time. Because we're not. We're human. We make assumptions. We get it wrong. The system has to be better than we are." Marcus extended his hand. "Good luck, man. Change some things up there." They shook, and Daniel felt another piece of his old life settle into place. Not forgotten, just integrated into whatever came next. His first day as Director of Professional Standards and Ethics began with an empty office on the 3rd floor. Victoria had offered him something bigger, more prestigious, but Daniel had chosen this space deliberately. It was small, accessible, on the same floor as HR and legal but separate from executive row. A place where people could come without feeling like they were walking into the seat of power. He spent the morning setting up. A desk, 2 chairs, a small couch for longer conversations. Nothing intimidating. Nothing that screamed authority. On the wall, he hung a single frame, the photo of Lily at her soccer game, the same one from his locker. A reminder of why this mattered. His first visitor arrived at 10:30, Sarah from dispatch, holding a folder and looking nervous. "Daniel, do you have a minute?" "I have all the time you need. Come in, sit down." She settled onto the couch, clutching the folder like a shield. "I don't know if this is the right place to bring this, but I didn't know where else to go." "What's going on?" "It's my supervisor. He's been making comments about my appearance, about what I wear. Nothing I can point to and say that's harassment, but it makes me uncomfortable. And when I mentioned it to HR before, they said I was being too sensitive." Daniel pulled out a notepad. "Tell me everything. Start from the beginning." She did. 45 minutes of details, of moments that individually seemed small but collectively created a pattern. The kind of thing that slipped through cracks, that got dismissed as personality conflicts or oversensitivity or just the way things were. When she finished, Daniel looked at her directly. "You're not being too sensitive. What you're describing is inappropriate. and it's my job to make sure it's addressed. I'm going to talk to HR, to your supervisor, and to his manager. You may be asked to provide a formal statement. Are you comfortable with that? Will he know I reported him? He'll know a complaint was made. I'll do everything I can to protect you from retaliation, but I can't guarantee anonymity. These situations work best when we can address them directly and transparently. Sarah considered this. What if he retaliates anyway? What if I lose my job over this? Then he'll lose his, and the company will face consequences for allowing it. That's what this position is for, to make sure doing the right thing doesn't cost you everything. She nodded slowly. Okay, let's do it. After Sarah left, Daniel sat in his small office and felt the weight of what he'd just taken on. One case on his first day. One person trusting him to fix what was broken. How many more would there be? The answer came quickly. By the end of his first week, he'd received 8 formal complaints, 14 informal inquiries, and countless stopped-in-the-hallway conversations from people who just wanted to know if their concerns were valid. The work was harder than driving, more emotionally draining. Every case was someone's crisis, someone's fear that speaking up would destroy them. Daniel listened to them all, documented everything, and began the slow process of changing a culture that had valued reputation over reality for too long. Some cases were clear-cut. Others existed in gray areas where intent mattered as much as impact, where interpretation colored everything. Daniel learned quickly that there were no perfect solutions, only better ones. 3 months into his new role, Daniel stood in front of the entire company again. Not because of scandal this time, but because Victoria had asked him to present the first quarterly ethics report. The conference hall was packed, the same space where his life had been publicly restored, now filled with people waiting to hear what changes his position had brought. Daniel looked out at the sea of faces, some familiar, some new, all watching him with varying degrees of curiosity and skepticism. He'd learned in these past months that change came slowly, that trust had to be rebuilt conversation by conversation, decision by decision. 3 months ago, this position didn't exist, he began, his voice steady despite the nerves coiling in his stomach. The company had policies about workplace conduct, procedures for reporting problems, and people dedicated to enforcing rules. What we didn't have was someone whose only job was to make sure that doing the right thing didn't cost you everything. He clicked to the first slide showing statistics he'd compiled. 37 formal complaints filed, 62 informal consultations, 15 cases resolved through mediation, 8 terminations for verified misconduct, 4 instances where the complaint itself was found to be retaliatory or false, resulting in consequences for the complainant. These numbers tell a story, Daniel continued. They tell us that people were sitting on problems, afraid to speak up because they'd seen what happened to others who did. They tell us that our culture needed work. And they tell us that when you create safe channels for truth, people will use them. He saw Victoria in the front row, nodding slightly. Beside her sat several board members, the same ones who'd wanted to fire him to protect the company's image. Their expressions were harder to read. But numbers don't capture the full picture, Daniel said. So I want to share some stories. Names removed, details changed to protect privacy, but the essence true. He told them about Sarah from Dispatch, whose supervisor had been quietly transferred after an investigation confirmed a pattern of inappropriate comments. About Marcus, young Marcus, his replacement driver, who'd reported a client making racial slurs and been supported instead of told to tolerate it for the sake of business. About an accountant who'd discovered financial irregularities and feared reporting them would make her a target, but found protection instead. In every one of these cases, Daniel said, someone had to make a choice. Stay silent and stay safe, or speak up and risk everything. The goal of this position isn't to eliminate that choice. It's to make sure that speaking up doesn't mean risking everything. It's to make integrity less expensive. He paused, letting that sink in. I know some of you are wondering if this position exists because of what happened to me. The answer is yes, but not for the reasons you might think. It exists because I learned that the truth is expensive when there's no one willing to pay for it. It exists because good people shouldn't have to choose between their conscience and their livelihood. And it exists because a company that punishes integrity isn't worth working for. The room was absolutely silent. Over the next quarter, we're implementing mandatory training on these new protocols. Every employee, every level, including executives. We're also creating an anonymous reporting system for those who aren't comfortable coming forward directly. And we're establishing clear protections against retaliation that will be enforced without exception. Daniel advanced to his final slide. The question I get asked most often is, how do we balance protecting accusers with protecting the accused? How do we ensure that this system isn't weaponized? The answer is that we investigate everything thoroughly. We assume neither guilt nor innocence until evidence is gathered, and we hold everyone to the same standard regardless of position or popularity. It's not perfect. It won't catch everything, but it's better than what we had before. He closed his laptop. That's the report. Questions? Hands shot up across the room. For the next 40 minutes, Daniel fielded everything from procedural questions to philosophical challenges to barely veiled skepticism about whether any of this would actually change anything. He answered each question honestly, admitting when he didn't have all the answers, explaining the reasoning behind decisions that had been difficult to make. He felt Victoria watching him, measuring his performance, and he realized with some surprise that he didn't care what she thought. He cared about whether he was doing the job right, whether he was making a difference, whether the people in this room would trust him enough to use the systems he was building. When the meeting ended, Daniel gathered his materials and headed back to his small office. He'd barely sat down when his phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Well done. You're a natural at this." He wasn't sure about that, but he was learning. Every day brought new challenges, new situations that didn't fit neatly into the frameworks he was trying to establish. Like the case currently sitting in his inbox, a complicated situation where both parties seemed to be telling the truth about fundamentally incompatible versions of the same events. Like the executive who'd been reported for favoritism, but whose favorites were legitimately the highest performers. Like the whisper network that had formed among some employees who resented the increased scrutiny and called his office the complaint department. Daniel was reading through case files when Sarah from Dispatch appeared in his doorway. She looked different than she had 3 months ago, lighter, more confident. "Hey, just wanted to thank you," she said. "I heard from a friend in another department that Jenkins is gone, the supervisor who was transferred from my area. Apparently he did the same thing there, and this time they actually fired him." Daniel nodded. He'd heard the same thing but couldn't discuss personnel matters directly. "I'm glad you came forward when you did. It helped establish a pattern. It helped that you believed me, that you didn't tell me I was being too sensitive or that I needed thicker skin. You weren't being too sensitive. You were being appropriately sensitive to inappropriate behavior. There's a difference." After Sarah left, Daniel sat with that thought. How many people had been told they were too sensitive, too emotional, too quick to take offense? How many had internalized that message and stayed silent while things got worse? His phone rang. Lily's school. Daniel's heart jumped. Calls from school during the day were never good news. "Mr. Reed, this is Principal Davidson. Lily's fine, but there's been an incident we need to discuss. Can you come in?" 20 minutes later, Daniel sat in the principal's office while Lily perched on a chair beside him, her face set in stubborn defiance that reminded him painfully of himself. "Lily got into a physical altercation with another student," Principal Davidson explained. "She pushed Jacob Miller during recess. He fell and scraped his knee. She's been given detention and we needed to inform you." Daniel looked at his daughter. "Lily, what happened?" "Jacob said you only got your job because Ms. Hale feels guilty about lying. He said the video was fake and everyone knows it, but they're too scared to say it because Ms. Hale is rich." Lily's voice shook with rage. "He said, you're still a bad person who tricks people, so I pushed him." The principal cleared her throat. "While we understand Lily was defending you, violence is never the answer. We have a zero-tolerance policy." "I understand," Daniel said. Then to Lily, "Violence isn't okay. You know that. But I need you to understand something else, too. There will always be people who believe the worst, who prefer the lie because it's more interesting. You can't fight all of them, and you definitely can't push all of them. But he was wrong about you." "I know, and you know, and everyone who matters knows. Jacob's opinion doesn't change the truth. It just shows that he'd rather hold on to a story than accept reality." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "I just wanted him to stop saying mean things." "I know, baby. But here's what I need you to learn. You can't control what other people say or think. You can only control how you respond. And pushing him made you the one who got in trouble, even though he started it with his words. That's not fair, but it's how it works. They drove home in silence. Lily stared out the window, processing. Finally, she said, "How do you do it, Daddy? How do you stay calm when people say bad things about you?" "I remember that their opinions don't define me. My actions do. And I focus on the people who matter, the ones who actually know me. Like me. Especially like you." She was quiet for another moment. "I'm sorry I pushed Jacob. I know you'll apologize to him too. But Lily, I'm also kind of proud that you wanted to defend me. Just find a better way to do it next time, okay?" "Like what?" "Like telling the truth. Like living in a way that makes the lies obvious. Like being so good that the bad stories can't stick." That night, after Lily was asleep, Daniel sat on his small balcony and looked out at the Chicago skyline. Somewhere out there, people still believed the worst about him. Jacob's parents, probably. Some former coworkers. Random strangers on the internet who'd moved on to other scandals, but whose comments remained permanent digital scars. He thought vindication would erase all of that. That the truth coming out would reset everything to how it was before. But he'd learned it didn't work that way. Some damage was permanent. Some relationships were irreparably changed. Some people would always choose to believe the exciting lie over the boring truth. What had changed was his relationship to all of it. He'd stopped trying to convince everyone, started focusing on the work that mattered, the changes that could actually make a difference. His phone buzzed with an email. From Rachel, his ex-wife. She'd been seeing Lily twice a month now, supervised visits that had gradually become easier. The email contained photos from their last outing to the zoo, Lily grinning next to a giraffe exhibit. "She's an amazing kid. You've done an incredible job with her. I know I don't say that enough. Thank you for giving me this chance to know her." Daniel saved the photos and thought about second chances, about how they came in unexpected forms, about how the worst moments could sometimes crack open doors you'd thought were permanently closed. The next 6 months blurred together in a steady rhythm of cases and conversations and incremental change. Daniel's office became a known quantity in the company culture. Some people used it genuinely. Others tried to weaponize it, filing frivolous complaints to settle personal scores or deflect from their own poor performance. Daniel learned to distinguish between the two, to investigate everything while maintaining healthy skepticism. He also learned that changing culture was like turning a massive ship. You couldn't just spin the wheel and expect immediate response. You had to be patient, consistent, relentless. You had to prove through repeated action that the new way was real, that the protections were genuine, that speaking up wouldn't destroy you. Slowly, the company changed. Not dramatically, not completely, but measurably. Exit interviews showed increased satisfaction with workplace culture. Employee surveys reflected higher trust in leadership. The number of complaints decreased, not because problems disappeared, but because more issues were being addressed before they escalated to formal complaints. And Daniel's office became something unexpected, a place where people came not just to report problems, but to ask ethical questions. Junior employees wrestling with whether to report a colleague's mistake. Managers uncertain about how to handle performance issues fairly. Executives trying to navigate the space between business needs and employee welfare. He became, in a sense, the company's conscience. Not because he had all the answers, but because he was willing to sit with the hard questions. One afternoon, a year after his promotion, Victoria appeared in his doorway. "Got a minute?" she asked. "Always." She sat on the small couch, the same spot where dozens of employees had poured out their stories. "I wanted to give you a heads up. The board is discussing expanding your role, creating a team, hiring additional staff to handle the increasing workload. This would mean you'd be managing people, setting broader policy, basically building a whole ethics department." Daniel considered this. "That's a big expansion." "You've proven the concept. When we created this position, some board members thought it was just optics, a feel-good response to bad publicity. But you've made it essential. The data shows it. The culture shift shows it. Even the skeptics are coming around." "Some of them, maybe. Others still think I got here through favoritism." Victoria's expression hardened. "Let them think that. You've earned this twice over, once by helping me when you didn't have to, and again by doing this job better than anyone expected. What do you think I should do? I think you should build something that outlasts both of us. I think you should create a system so strong that it survives changes in leadership, economic downturns, corporate reorganizations. I think you should make integrity structural, not aspirational. After she left, Daniel sat with the weight of that possibility. A team, a department, real institutional power to make lasting change. It was everything he could have wanted from this position, and terrifying in equal measure. That evening, he talked it through with Lily over dinner. She was 10 now, growing into herself, old enough to understand nuance and complexity.
So you'd be like a real boss? She asked. With people working for you? Yeah, I guess so. That's cool.
You'd be good at that. What makes you say that?
Because you always listen.
Even when I'm being annoying, you listen to the whole thing before you decide what to do. That's what good bosses do, right? Listen? Out of the mouths of 10-year-olds, Daniel thought. You're pretty smart, you know that? I get it from you. He accepted the expansion. Over the next 3 months, he hired 2 ethics officers and an administrative coordinator. He trained them in the principles he'd developed, the balance between protection and investigation, between empathy and objectivity. He watched them handle cases and intervened when necessary and learned to delegate when he didn't need to. The department grew, the impact expanded, other companies started reaching out, asking about Hale Industries' ethics program, wanting to replicate what Daniel had built. He gave presentations at industry conferences, wrote articles for business journals, became an unexpected expert in corporate integrity. But the work that mattered most still happened in his small office, in one-on-one conversations with people who needed someone to believe them, to take them seriously, to prove that honesty wouldn't destroy them. Like the meeting he took on a rainy Tuesday, 18 months after that night that had changed everything. The employee was young, nervous, clutching a folder of documentation about financial irregularities she'd discovered. The same fear Daniel had seen in Sarah's eyes that first day, the same question underlying everything. Will speaking up cost me everything? Tell me what you found, Daniel said. She did, and he listened, and he investigated. And when the evidence proved her concerns valid, he ensured she was protected while the matter was addressed. It was what he'd built this for. These moments, these decisions, these small acts of institutional integrity that added up to something larger. 2 years after the night that almost destroyed him, Daniel stood in a new apartment, bigger, nicer, in a neighborhood with better schools. He'd been able to afford it because of the promotion, the raises, the career trajectory that had emerged from wreckage. Lily was unpacking her room, arranging her soccer trophies and books, and the accumulated treasures of a childhood that had been marked by struggle and resilience. Rachel was helping, a strange reality that Daniel had slowly adjusted to. She'd proven herself over 2 years of consistent presence, of showing up for Lily without asking for more than she'd earned. They weren't friends, he and Rachel. They'd never be married again, but they'd found a way to co-parent that worked, that put Lily first, that acknowledged past failures without being imprisoned by them. This place is amazing, Rachel said, joining Daniel in the living room while Lily sang to herself in the other room. You've done really well. We got lucky. After everything fell apart, we got lucky. Luck had nothing to do with it. You handled an impossible situation with integrity, and eventually that mattered. That's not luck, that's character. Daniel thought about that word. Character. It's what Victoria had seen in him, what the video had proven, what his job now depended on teaching others to value. You know what the strangest part is, he said. I spent 17 years as a driver doing everything right, being invisible, just trying to provide for Lily. I was fine with that, content even. And then one night, one decision to help someone blew up my entire life. And somehow, from that explosion, I ended up here, doing work that matters more than anything I'd done before. You think that would have happened without the scandal? No. Victoria never would have seen me as anything but a driver. I never would have seen myself as anything but a driver. It took everything falling apart for something better to be built. Rachel smiled. That's very philosophical for a Tuesday afternoon. I've had a lot of time to think about it. After Rachel left, Daniel helped Lily arrange her room. They hung her favorite posters, organized her bookshelf, set up the desk where she'd do homework. Normal parent tasks, normal life. The kind of ordinary he'd thought was lost forever during those dark days of suspension and speculation. That night, after Lily was asleep in her new room, Daniel sat on his new balcony and opened his laptop. An email from the driver in Seattle, the one who'd reached out after the video went public. Mr. Reed, I wanted to let you know that your story inspired me to apply for a position with a nonprofit that advocates for workers' rights. I start next month. I'd spent 3 years thinking that what happened to me proved the world was fundamentally unfair. Watching your situation get resolved proved that sometimes justice wins, not always, not even most of the time, but sometimes, and sometimes is enough to keep fighting. Thank you for being the sometimes. Daniel read the email twice, then closed his laptop and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, his story still existed on the internet, immortalized in articles and videos and social media threads. The photograph that had nearly destroyed him was still one click away for anyone who searched his name, but it had become a footnote, a chapter in a larger story. The scandal that had led to transformation, the crisis that had created opportunity, the injustice that had sparked systemic change. He thought about young Marcus, learning to drive routes through the city, about Sarah from Dispatch, working without fear now, about the dozens of employees who'd come through his office with problems they'd once have suffered in silence, about the email from Seattle, from a man he'd never met whose life had been changed by watching truth prevail. He thought about Lily, asleep in her new room, growing up with a father who taught her through direct example that doing the right thing mattered even when it cost everything, especially then. The rain had started again, gentle this time, washing the city clean in the way rain never actually could, but always seemed to promise. Daniel watched it fall and felt something settle in his chest. Not closure, exactly. Not vindication, though he'd had that. Something quieter and more sustainable. Peace with the complexity. Acceptance that some people would always believe the worst. Understanding that character wasn't about being recognized for doing right, but about doing right regardless of recognition. His phone buzzed one last time. A text from Victoria. Board approved the budget for ethics department expansion. You're officially building something permanent. Well done. Daniel smiled and set the phone down. He'd started as a driver, become a scandal, transformed into a director, and was now building something that would outlast all of it. The trajectory made no sense and perfect sense simultaneously. Tomorrow he'd go to work and handle whatever cases landed on his desk. He'd listen to people's problems and investigate their claims and try to find the truth in situations where truth was often obscured by emotion and competing interests. He'd make some decisions that were right and some that were questionable and learn from both. He'd pick Lily up from school and hear about her day and help with homework and make dinner and do all the ordinary things that had once seemed threatened and now felt precious in their normalcy. He'd continue building a life from the ruins of the one that had been destroyed. He'd keep proving that integrity mattered, not through grand gestures, but through small, consistent choices that added up to something larger. The story that had started with a simple act of kindness, driving a drunk boss home, staying when asked, sleeping on a couch, had become something he never could have imagined. Not a cautionary tale, though it could have been. Not a tragedy, though it had felt like one. But a transformation, from driver to director, from invisible to essential, from victim to advocate, from a man whose life was defined by one viral photograph to a man whose life was defined by what he built afterward. Daniel stood on his balcony, in his new apartment, in his new life, and felt the weight of everything that had brought him here. The fear and anger and injustice, the vindication and opportunity and responsibility, the relationships broken and rebuilt and newly formed. It hadn't been worth it exactly. He'd never choose to go through that nightmare again. But having gone through it, having survived it, having transformed it into something meaningful, that had worth. He thought about the email from Seattle one more time. Sometimes is enough to keep fighting. Daniel Reed had been a driver for 17 years, doing his job well and living his life quietly. Then one night, and one decision had changed everything, had almost destroyed everything, and had ultimately revealed who he'd always been beneath the uniform and the invisibility. A good man, not because he claimed to be, but because when tested in ways he never expected and didn't deserve, He'd chosen integrity over safety, truth over convenience, character over capitulation. And in the end, character had been enough. Not to prevent the suffering, not to avoid the cost, but to endure it, to survive it, and to build something better on the other side. The rain continued falling. The city continued living. Lily slept peacefully in her new room, and Daniel stood watching it all, a man who'd learned that the right thing rarely looked right in the moment, that justice was expensive and slow, and sometimes didn't come at all. But sometimes it did, and sometimes was enough. He went inside, checked on Lily one last time, and went to bed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new cases, new opportunities to prove that integrity could be more than aspiration, that truth could matter, that doing right when no one was watching could lead to doing right when everyone was. The photograph would always exist, the scandal would always be part of his story. But it wasn't the whole story anymore, just the chapter that had broken him open so something stronger could emerge. Daniel closed his eyes and slept the sleep of a man who'd fought for truth and won. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough, always enough.